what's going on, guys? It is Rinne-Hatake here, back with another video, and today I got What If Naruto Was the Reincarnation of Minato Part 2, otherwise known as What If Naruto Was Like Minato. And this story is from Wattpad, and I am continuing it, so hopefully you guys enjoyed the first part, but without further ado, let's begin. So where I left off, flashback end. Ever since that day, Naruto studied even more rigorously. The beginning of rigorously, and began physical training as well. Granted, a 4-year-old such as him could not do much, but he did his best. He ran 4 rounds around the village, did every exercise he could possibly think of, and practiced his kunai and shuriken jutsu. He took those weapons by sneaking into the practice grounds and collecting them. To his surprise, the art of throwing shuriken and kunai came very naturally to him. He started throwing after taking a book about weapons left behind on a training ground. He had shaken his head at the disrespect shown to the book, but took it with him anyway. Just 2 weeks of practice and he was throwing all bullseyes. That was not the only surprising thing. He found he had found that he could recover very quickly from exhaustion and where his muscles were torn. Don't know what that would really say, but okay. He recalled that he recovered surprisingly quickly after the beating from the villagers. A bloodline, perhaps. He didn't dwell on it further, but filed it away for later. But today was special, so special that he would have to take extra measures in staying safe, because today was his birthday, and he was just kicked out of the orphanage roaming in the streets. He suspected what would happen in the evening. Today was the day the villagers celebrated as the Kyuubi festival, the day the Yondaime defeated the Kyuubi, and the day he would be beaten within an inch of his life, or hunted and possibly killed. Okay. An epiphany, I think that's what it said. I don't know, but okay, I'm just gonna say an epiphany. An epiphany struck him like lightning, causing him to suddenly stop in the middle of the street. Yondaime, Kyuubi's defeat, treatment of the villagers, Demon Boy, Chiji's avoidance of the topic. No, he wouldn't. Naruto ran from the street, meandering between people with the grace of a seasoned dancer of flowing water. He ran like it was no one's business, reaching his favorite spot, the head of the Yondaime, in record time. Anyone who saw him had flashbacks of another blonde running like a man possessed. I need to confirm whether it's true or not, he thought grimly. Afraid of what he would find, he sat down on the head of the famed Hokage in a meditative position, and reached within, or rather spoke within. Kyuubi, if you are inside me, I want to meet you, please. For a full 5 minutes, there was no reply, and Naruto was beginning to relax when something pulled on his mind. Naruto opened his eyes to find himself in a dark corridor. He narrowed his eyes. Is this my mindscape? He thought in disgust as he walked forward. He kept walking for a few minutes and stopped, seeing some light at the end of the corridor. It seemed to pull him towards it. Time to find out what is at the end. With that thought, he walked again, stopping only until the end. It was a huge room, so large and vast that the ceiling was impossible to find. He looked around, his eyes seeing black stone and nothing more. But the elephant in the room was a large iron barred door with a piece of paper that read seal. He gazed at the piece of paper, resignation written in his eyes. His azure eyes looked past the cage, looking for what he knew was in the cage. He was just waiting for the QB to open his eyes. Based on what he had read, QB was a being pure evil, pure hatred and evil, a mindless beast on capable of destruction on a scale hitherto. Oh my goodness, hitherto undreamt of. I don't know what that means, but okay. But Naruto was skeptical when he had read, and when he had read that, he might get to see it for himself. Now, a growl sounded from the cage, sending a hot breath of air in Naruto's face. Naruto steeled himself, in spite of the cage separating him from the beast within. An enormous red eye opened, causing Naruto to tense up. The eye opened. Okay, let me read that again. The eye looked at him, as if evaluating him. The eye then started to rise, causing Naruto to look up at the massive form. The QB had orange silky looking fur and black markings around his eyes. Black markings around his eyes connected to his funnily enough, rabbit-like ears. The upper body was humanoid, including the hands. The lower body was just like a fox, bearing the 9 long swaying tails in the back. Fire was the closest thing they looked like. The red-slitted eyes looked him closely, with a hint of malice. Naruto spoke up first. "Thank you for answering my call, QB," he had said with a nod. If the QB was surprised, he didn't show it. Inside, however, he was mighty shocked. This was not the first thing he had expected his jailer to say. He expected him to look at the QB with fear, asking whether he really was the QB, following with the denial of the possibility. He did expect him to thank him. He didn't expect him to thank him at all. He replied with, "Think nothing of it. I'm surprised, though, that you were able to figure it out so quickly. Why aren't you surprised?" he asked curiously. Naruto sat down in the front of the cage, which surprised the great Bijou further. Naruto was showing that he was willing to relax in front of him. "Well, I was for a few moments at least, but it wasn't that difficult to figure it out. It's easy to create a plausible theory once you have all the relevant facts," he said, never breaking eye contact with the QB. QB raised a massive eyebrow, silently impressed with his host. His thought process were very intelligent. For someone who was only 5 years old, he was bold as well. He was bold enough to maintain eye contact with him. He also could not sense any fear from the boy. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" he asked. Without a moment of hesitance, Naruto answered, "Because you are misunderstood." This time, surprise was visible on the face of the QB, which was quickly followed by anger. "What did you just say? Choose your words very carefully," he growled. Naruto wasted no time answering. "In all the books I've read, they describe you as being pure hatred. But that is only a one-sided understanding. That's only a one-sided understanding, isn't it?" he asked with a sad smile. Before the QB could answer, Naruto continues. "Humans fear what they can't understand. The foremost aspect of your personality that they have seen is hatred, which, while a big part of you, conceals the underneath that can feel emotions just like us. Isn't that right, QB?" Kyuubi was astounded at the amount of understanding his host showed towards him. Perhaps he could. What do you want? Naruto looked at him with his azure blue eyes, reminding the Kyuubi of another set of blue eyes that looked at him fearlessly before sealing him. If you wouldn't mind, a hesitant smile appeared on his face. Would you be my friend? The Kyuubi was truly stupefied at their request. For the first time in centuries of his existence, someone had asked if they could be his friend. Naruto saw that the Kyuubi was surprised and for the Kyuubi. If Naruto's request was not surprising enough, he was totally blown away by it. What Naruto did next? Naruto got up from his spot and walked into the cage. He walked up and offered a hand to him. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and it's nice to meet you. The Kyuubi had abandoned all signs of remaining composed, and was openly gaping at Naruto. But he was composed himself quickly and gave a sincere smile to Naruto. Seeing Naruto was too small to even shake his finger, he extended his index nail to him. My name is Kurama. Nice to meet you too, Naruto. Well, that's the end of chapter 1, so I'll be reading a bit of chapter 2. So this is chapter 2. Okay, so Naruto smiled. You have a very nice name, Kurama. The newly dubbed Kurama smiled. Thank you. It means a lot coming from someone whose name means fish cake. Kurama smirked at the end, intentionally making the jab at Naruto's name to see if he could rile the boy up. His success was only minuscule, though Naruto only had a tiny frown on his face instead of a full-blown childish rage Kurama was expecting. Actually, I prefer the other meaning of my name. Milestorm is much better than being compared to a fish cake. Kurama chuckled, a smooth, deep baritone that lit up a warm feeling inside Naruto. Naruto decided he liked Kurama's voice. No one would think that no one would think of Maelstrom when they look at you, Naruto, perhaps when you are older, but certainly not now, Kurama teased. Well, guys, I need a water break, so I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and, alright, I'm gonna continue where I left off. Naruto shrugged, and his eyes turned serious, making Kurama do the same. Naruto asked the Bishu, Kurama, you know I have a question, right? Kurama nodded. No, I assume as such. However, I had expected us to meet when you were significantly older. I have to say, I was not expecting your call to me. Naruto shook his head. Well, if it makes you feel better, I was not expecting you to pull me inside my mind, he said, absently noting that he was not wet at all. In spite of the standing and sitting in the water, Kurama returned to his earlier position, lying down on his face. No, lying down, face on his paws. I will do my best to answer whatever question you have, Naruto, he assured. Naruto gave him a nod of gratitude and sat down as well. Okay, my first question. Why does my mindscape represent a gutter or sewer? Whatever you want to call it. Kurama looked silent for a moment. After a mischievous grin broke out on his face, exposing his sharp candies. Okay? You know what they say about people whose minds are in the gutter, right? Naruto gave him a blank look, reminding Kurama that Naruto, however intelligent for his age, was only 5 years old. Kurama's embarrassed blush would have been visible on his face if his fur were not orange. He cleared his throat loudly to avoid embarrassment. Sorry, Naruto, but I have no idea why your mindscape is a sewer. The theory that says that your mind is the reflection of your mental state. It could have been the psychological trauma that was given to you by the villagers. But why is it particularly a sewer? I don't know, he replied. But why is it particularly a sewer? I don't know, he replied. Naruto absorbed the information like a sponge, and after a few seconds he asked Kurama, so I have psychological trauma. I knew about that, which means that if I'm, even if I change the appearance of my mindscape, something else, change my mindscape to something else, there will always be something that represents the trauma, right? Kurama inclined his head in agreement, smiling a little. That's right. If I have to say though, it's nice to talk to someone who is intelligent. Naruto's eyes visibly brightened up at the praise, given a full-blown smile to his newest friend. Kurama noted with some amusement. The grin looked similar to his own in the redhead. Naruto jumped to his feet, Your answer was confirmed. Something for me, Kurama. Wait, let me read that again. I'm totally confused. Naruto jumped to his feet. Your answer just confirmed something for me, Kurama. His smile had a mix of excitement and determination to them, as if he was about to do something new. Naruto closed his eyes and clapped his hands together. Face up, concentrated. Scrunched up in concentration. Kurama observed him quietly, wondering what his host was about to do. Naruto snapped his eyes open after a few minutes, having envisioned what he was about to do. With a cry of "Ha!" he slammed his right hand on the ground. What happened next was completely blew away his mind. A wave of energy exploded from Naruto in all the directions, completely lighting up the mindscape and almost blinding Kurama. Was it chakra that exploded from him? How is that even possible when he hasn't even unlocked it yet? The pulse of chakra completely shredded everything. It came in contact with him. Naruto may have possibly destroyed his own mind, where he thought, running through Kurama's head, basically. When he opened his eyes, however, he was stupefied to a degree he didn't think it was possible. His eyes were widened. His jaw was hanging, making him look quite comical. A beautiful valley greeted his eyes, grounds that were lush and a shade of green that looked heavenly, streams with water clearer than he had ever seen. The grass felt soft under his limbs, and there was a massive oak tree with a shade that made it great for naps. The cage around him had disappeared, instead replacing with a collar, which had the same piece of paper before, with a kanji for seal written on it. He looked at Naruto in wonder. This kid was a package of one surprise after another. Naruto got up from his position, looking no worse uh, for looking no worse for wear. Okay? He smiled satisfactorily. This is so much better than before. Wouldn't you agree, Kurama? He asked, turning to him. Kurama was smiling like he was the happiest being on earth. No one had ever done anything for him. Naruto, who had just met him, had already done so much for him. Kurama looked at Naruto with gratitude in his eyes. Thank you. Naruto, you have no idea how much this means to me. Naruto just shook his head. Don't worry about it. We're friends, right? Kurama nodded, feeling excitement in a long time, feeling excitement in a very long time. Wanting to explore what Naruto had created for himself, he was about to leave when Naruto's voice stopped him mid-step. However, it seems strange that there is no presence of a celestial body in the sky I had envisioned. It was just like outside, he mused, a frown on his 5-year-old face that would have earned. Okay, pause. Let me just pause real quick. Let me just say that again real quick. He mused, a frown on his 5-year-old face that would have earned him so many squeals of kawaii from girls. Kurama too wondered what the what reason could what the reason could be, and quickly figured it out. He looked up and thought perhaps it was because of the seal, he muttered. Naruto looked up at him, confusion written clear on his face. What do you mean? Kurama looked down at Naruto with the seal that keep. Kurama looked down at Naruto. The seal keeps me inside you, Naruto. If it was only you, and if it was only you, you would have had absolute control over your mindscape. But since I'm here as well, the control gets divided equally. However, control on my side is restricted because of the seal. The absence of the sun or the moon you had envisioned could signify that this place is cut off from my senses. In easier terms, the outside world, he explained. Naruto processed Kurama's answer. If the seal was restricting Kurama's activity, what do you propose I should do, Kurama? Kurama put his hand under his chin. He could only see one way around this, and if Naruto messed up, it could spell trouble for both of them. But he could try his best to not let that happen. You would have to tear off that small piece of paper on my collar. Leave the rest to me, Kurama assured. When Naruto looked a little bit hesitant, Kurama told him, "Don't worry, Naruto. You can do it. If something goes wrong, I'll take care of it." The reassurance erased any doubt from Naruto's face, and he promptly marched up to Kurama's collar, making sure to tear only the smallest piece of paper. Kurama nodded in satisfaction and approval. He could feel a tiny bit of control get back to him. He snapped the control back to him. Just a snap of his fingers, the sun appeared in the sky, lighting up the valley, making it even more beautiful. Naruto smiled at the sight, but it faded. At the sight of the cave that he instinctively knew not to go near. He turned back to Kurama, who had an expression of his. Oh my goodness! Let me say that again. Apologies for the stuttering. He turned back to Kurama, who had an expression of curiosity on his face. Naruto, what was that wave of energy that exploded from you earlier? How did you do it? How did you change your mindscape? Naruto gave him an innocent look. It's my mind, Kurama. I can make anything happen here. As for the energy wave, his expression turned sheepish and rubbed the back of his head, reminding him of the boy's mother, who had the same habit. It just seemed cooler than changing the surroundings in a blink of an eye. This was this time it was Kurama who gave him a blank look. A sweat drop appeared on the side of his head at the sheepish laugh of his host. He shook his head. It seemed Naruto liked to be dramatic, a dramatic, um, a dramatic, dramatic, I think, yeah, dramatic, a dramatic, dramatic smart aleck. He concerned, he concentrated and nodded in satisfaction. He could now sense chakra signatures of almost the whole village. Once Naruto opened his eyes, Kurama would be able to see as well. Nevertheless, you have my thanks. Allow me to repay you with something that will come very handy once you become a shinobi, Kurama smiled, raising his fingernail and gently touching Naruto's forehead. The nail shined for a moment and then faded back. Naruto raised an eyebrow. What was that? Kurama smiled mysteriously. Why? Why couldn't you discover it yourself? I can feel several chakra signatures closing in on you. Time for you to open your eyes, Naruto. Naruto nodded and turned to leave, but froze. He slowly turned his head and smiled embarrassedly. How do I leave? Kurama had to squash an urge to facepalm. It seemed that Naruto had his moments of stupidity every now and then. Just jump into the water, fish cake, he said okay, he said expressively. Naruto frowned at fish cake, but nodded and with a leap that was impossible for any child his age, jumped into the water. Kurama shook his head amused. It was only because Naruto was in his own mind, that he was able to do so. Perhaps I would have to, perhaps I should have told him that he could get out with just a thought, he mused. Then he just removes the thought immediately. Nah, it's too much fun messing with him. Naruto opened his eyes slowly, without a hurry. He was just thinking about what gift did Kurama give him? What gift did Kurama give him? When he felt like, when he felt it, someone was coming his way. He slowly turned his head, turning his head, face paling at the sight. Dozens of people, knives, clubs, crowbars in hand, excited expressions on their faces, shouting, "Today's the day you die, demon! We will finish you! We will finish what the Yondaime started, and we will avenge him!" Naruto's expression had turned utterly horrified. There was only one way to get out of the moment without falling splat on the pavement. Outrun and outmaneuver the mob. He wasted no time. He kipped to his feet and immediately started running in a perpendicular direction to the mob. Since he had been running regularly for 1 year, he built up pretty good speed and endurance. His plan was to take a wide arc around the mob as soon as it was behind him, hightail it into the streets where he could lose them. He took off into the forest, the mob following closely behind. As he began to cut an arc around the mob, his hair on his back. The hair of oh my goodness, apologies. Hairs on the back of his neck stood up, a clear sign of danger. However, unlike before, when he could only detect danger, this time he could feel the direction the weapon was coming from. Naruto was an imaginative child from where he had developed his imagination. No one knew, but there was one thing that his imagination that even he knew was not normal. His body had the most unnatural, peculiar ability of following the commands of his mind down to down to a T. As soon as he had sensed the knives speeding at him, he thought of the only escape scenario. He thought of one. He thought of the only one escape scenario, and his body followed it, as it did several times. Just not in life and death scenarios. He jumped, body in the air, rotating like a screwdriver, and knives going under him, missing him by a few inches. He rolled on the ground to soften his landing and continued running, successfully getting the mob behind him and the road in front of him. He managed to get to the streets where he purposefully chose the market street where he could lose them. He knew the civilians could not do tricks that he could. He vaulted neatly over several carts without losing momentum, each time increasing the gap between him and the mob. He turned he turned left at an intersection and jumped up a wall, hanging on the other side until he was sure that the sounds of the mob faded away. He jumped back on the road. He took a moment to catch his breath. If it was not mistaken, he had run. He had run at full speed for close to 3 miles. For a 5-year-old. Impressive for a 5-year-old. The familiar voice of Kurama sounded in his head. Naruto looked surprised for a moment, but then shook his head. It was probably because of the change that he had done to the seal. He also chalked it up to adrenaline that he could run so far and fast. That was a lot difficult than he imagined. But he blamed it on his clothes. An orange jumpsuit stuck out like a sore thumb. Among the masses, it was like if he had struck a piece of paper behind his back saying, "Kill me." The blonde hair wasn't helping either. But then again, he had nothing else to wear. The keepers at the orphanage looked very satisfied when they had given him the jumpsuit. They probably wanted him to be spotted in the case he attempted to hide from a mob. Too bad they underestimated him. So deep he was in his musing that he didn't notice he had entered the area of Konoha. No one had ever taken a stroll in for at least 5 years. He looked when he saw standing before him beautiful gates to a mansion. And that's where I'll be leaving it off, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys on the next part. Peace.